Welcome in, everybody. UGA Football Live with JC Shelton. We're rattled. For the third time tonight, we are live. My mic is just absolutely not working with me today. If it shuts off again, if my mic shuts off again, we're just going to go straight up old school, use the computer mic, and we're not here for premium audio. Okay. We're here to talk about the sport we love and to preview Georgia, Kentucky, the SEC opener for the Bulldogs. So, apologies for all the posts where you're listening on Facebook or watching in on Twitter or YouTube. We are rolling with the punches today. All right. Mike may go out as we speak, but I'm going to use the Mac. I'm going to use the MacBook mic, and we'll roll with it. All right. So let's get into this game, Georgia, Kentucky, right? And I know you guys watched South Carolina, Kentucky last week. If you haven't, you've looked at the stat card. Absolute dismal performance by Kentucky and former Georgia quarterback Brock Vandagriff. That makes it a really interesting matchup, because we learned a lot from that matchup last week. We know a lot about Georgia, really because of that season opener, right, and taking Clemson the way they did in Atlanta, and that dominant performance there. So we've seen Georgia face up to good competition. I think that team wins the ACC. But we haven't really seen that from Carolina until last week, right, in Kentucky in that game. And it was just absolutely – it was weird watching Brock run around for his life. And if you know anything about Brock and, just from what I know about him as a person, I think he's a really good guy. And I think it made sense for him to transfer with Carson Beck coming back. He wanted some playing time, and he's gotten it at Kentucky. But watching him run around for his life, man, I just couldn't help feeling hurt for the guy. That offensive line they tried to piece together through the transfer portal, right, which is, I think, a really, really tough challenge. And we're seeing that in college football a little bit with the offensive lines that are kind of built around that portal, right? Because they went out and got a couple of guys from the SEC, one from Florida, one from Tennessee, Jalen Farmer from Florida, Gerald Mincey from Tennessee, right? And, previously in these Stoops teams at Kentucky, up front is where they usually excel. And that's, why are they consistently one of the better teams in the SEC with him as head coach. They don't really have huge drop-offs season to season. They're usually pretty good. And, they've given Georgia some close battles, really, in Lexington. And it's always a physical football team. But up front, they look a little different this year, right? And they try to do that through the portal. And I was sitting here and I was doing my research earlier and I was looking at that. And I was just thinking, look at Colorado and that offensive line, right? We already know what they look like up front, especially on the offensive line, right? They have a lot of issues there. Worst run offense in the country by a lot. They averaged like 0.7 yards per carry last week against Nebraska. Those offensive lines kind of built to the portal. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, how hard is it to create cohesiveness there, right, with a front like that, and especially in the SEC for Kentucky there, and you have a new quarterback, right, doesn't have a lot of game experience. He's trying to get his feet wet. Or you have to beat teams using the run, and that's what usually Kentucky has done in the past. So it's very, very, very uncharacteristic for them, and I think this offensive front this year, and they're trying to, they're facing that challenge. Now, that is a week 2 performance last week. It's Carolina. Was it 31-6, right? Bad interceptions by Brock. I get that, right? Can't do that. A lot of those were, missed throws, right? They don't really stretch you outside. They haven't really ever stretched you outside under Stoops. Right, so they're built on upfront play, and for them, this is a horrible matchup for Kentucky here, and welcome in Georgia to Lexington at 7:30 kick 2, right? I mean, I think this is a horrible matchup for them up front offensively like that. And then you look at that game last week. We'll just get into this game a little bit more, right? So they were outgained by Carolina 252 to 183, 183, 44 passing yards for Kentucky, 30 for Brock. 3 of 10 for 30 yards, 2.6 yards per pass, 2.6. He was sacked 5 times, averaged 3 yards per carry, allowed 11 tackles for loss, and 11 penalties at home. At home, 11 penalties. I mean, I don't know if you could really draw up a worse game for them. And I know it was a heck of an embarrassing start for Brock there at home. But it's up front, right? He's running for his life back there. And, those dudes that Carolina has, and Dylan Stewart, he's really, really good. 5-star freshman. He's playing out of his mind, right? They couldn't block him, but it wasn't just him too, right? It's a collective game, guys. Georgia has guys like that all over, and the guys that are coming in to back up your Michael Williams and your Tyrone Ingram Dawkins, and those guys, the guys that are coming in to replace and really keep those legs fresh for those star guys for Georgia, they would probably start at Carolina, right? That's what Georgia's built on, depth. So this is not looking good for Kentucky here, and we'll get into the line and such here in a minute. And speaking about Vandegrift, they love to use him in the run. It's what Kentucky does. They're going to use him in the run, going to use him in the pass, live off the play action. But if they can't create space on the outside and then get these guys moving in the pass game, then it doesn't really matter, does it? For a defense against a defense like Georgia, right? Who can match up with you man to man. Now they might give up a ball here or there, right? Maybe explosive play here or there, but consistently over 60 minutes of play, they're not going to give up a lot, right? So it just screams one-dimensional to me. Now, the way that they can, right, Kentucky, if they're game planning here against Georgia and they know, you can have a really, really, really talented defense, but running QB does pose problems, right? And Georgia has been every good defense has been bitten by that. So I think, what we're going to see here is we're going to see Vandegrift start. But we're going to see Gavin Wimsatt come in, and I think he'll come in a good bit. Just judging off that game last week, I know, they did sit Brock there a little bit, but that game was already in hand. He was running for his life. I think you could sit here and say they wanted to see what they had from Wimsatt because the game was already decided. I think I'm going with that. He's a different guy. He is primarily a runner, 6'3", 200 pounds. I think he comes in and he's gonna really add to that run game a little bit. And I think they're going to try to get, what does it do? It takes a defender away from the defense, right? So I think they're going to try to exploit that a little bit to see if they can get Georgia sideline to sideline, chasing after the quarterback too, and maybe run some option there. That's one way to try to loosen some things up there and then, hit Georgia over the top if you can, which nobody is able to do that so far, but I know it is Clemson and Tennessee Tech for Georgia, but nobody's been able to do that. I just don't know what Kentucky's going to do. I'm really interested in that game. And as far as offensively, what Kentucky decides to do. And I think this will be a very long day with that offensive line, very porous offensive line. Leading receiver here is Dane Key, 5 catches for 90 yards on the season. Barian Brown, he's that deep threat, 2 touchdowns. I only have one other receiver with a touchdown, by the way. Senior Demi Sumo, Sumo, carries the load here at running back. 25 carries, 129, a touchdown. Defensively, you got Jamin Dubas-Johnson, Pop, right? Really one of the better Georgia linebackers. And I think this week, a couple of guys, Raylan Wilson, he credited Jamon with kind of welcoming him in and CJ Allen in when they joined the team there, and really was a big part of their development. He's always a team guy at Georgia. I think we all want him to succeed. Really interesting transfer when you think about it. I mean, Georgia had so many dudes there. Not sure what went on, but he is their starter. He's their best player on defense, I think. They also have 60-year senior in J.J. Weaver. He's got 2 sacks, leads the team there. And we already talked about the rebuilt offensive line. We'll take a peek at the odds here. Georgia 24, right? Minus 24 here. Totals 45 and a half. It's interesting. We'll share a prediction here in a little bit. We'll talk about last year's game, Georgia Kentucky last year. 389 for Carson Beck passing, 4 touchdowns and a pick. Kentucky entered that game undefeated, 5-0, right? And Georgia just absolutely waxed them. Rushed for 173. Vandegrift even made an appearance, and that's when Georgia QB gets the garbage time appearance, that game is very, very, very out of reach. Interesting note for me, and if you're looking at this game last year, which was a 51-13 win by Georgia, Georgia doesn't have the team's 5 leading receivers from that game. So the nearest that comes close is Dominic Lovett, right? He was 6 on that stat card with like 2 catches. So like Brock Bowers, Lad McConkey, Marcus Rosemy, even Dejon Edwards had more catches than Dominic Lovett in that game, which I thought was really interesting, right? So that's just we had the preseason questions coming into the year, right? About that kind of reworked group there at receiver and the weapons, the new ones, right? The old ones and Dominic Lovett and Dylan Bell coming back, but also losing Brock Bowers and Lad McConkey and Marcus Rosemary. And Georgia really hasn't missed a beat. Number 5 offense in the country last year. You know, does the deed against Clemson, right? Slow first half, second half comes out and really spreads the ball better than almost any other offense in the country. I think Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss does a good job of this. USC, all the best offensive coordinators really do, and I think that's a barometer for success. How many players can you get involved? I think Georgia, versatility-wise, on the weapons they have, right? They can do so many different things. I mean, you look at obviously Dylan Bell he's kind of a unicorn, right? Because he did play tailback for some Georgia last year. And you look at tight end and Ben Urasek, right, with the ball in his hands. We haven't really seen him take off yet. I think that will come into play here, because Georgia against Tennessee Tech, even though, they took advantage of Tennessee Tech when Carson Beck got him in the right play. And I think my Bobo did a great job, of spreading the ball out, taking what the defense gives them and get out of there with a big win to open the season at home. Great home opener, by the way. Great weather for that. And now you get into a game here, the SEC opener. What does Georgia do here? They're going to spread the ball. They're going to run. They're going to pass. I don't think they're going to focus on any one area, right? I saw some talk about the weather for this game. And we all know those matchups, was it 21-0 a few years ago, Georgia, Kentucky? It was 2019, I believe. Yeah. Raining cats and dogs, which literally is cats and dogs, Georgia, Kentucky. Badoots. Raining. So what does Georgia do? They run the rock, baby. Run the rock. So I saw some talk about that in this game and how it would go. Well, the weather, it's going to be raining, probably. Georgia's going to run the ball. Those teams going to get out of there. It's going to be a really physical game. Maybe like 21-0 again, or 24-10 if they even get that many points. I looked at the weather. I don't know if everybody has different weather apps than I do. I don't know. I did some search. I even looked at Weather Channel, the great Weather Channel. And it's like a 27% and a low 60s. I don't. What are we talking about here, folks? I think it's gonna be fine. It sprinkles a little bit. It's not going to change the entire offensive game plan for both teams, right? Kentucky doesn't have much to work with there. Georgia can do whatever it kind of wants to because you have the guys up front, right? So we always talk. It kind of gets repetitive at this point, but the offensive defensive line is where these games are won in the SEC. Absolutely, right? Championship caliber teams. Who's ever usually there are exceptions. It is a very futile sport. 11 guys in the field at the same time. It does have its moments, but mainly, look at Texas and Michigan, right? Well, Texas won handedly because of the guys up front. Now, Quinn Ewers made some really, really good throws. And I want to get into this in that game and kind of where Texas is a little bit here in a minute as well. But, offensive, defensive line, Texas had the dudes. Michigan lost the dudes. They got those two DTs in the middle for Michigan. Really good. They're going to play on Sundays. But overall, as a collective group, right, those guys can't play every snap, right? So this is where Georgia excels, and they're gonna dog walk these teams like Kentucky. And Tennessee fans are gonna hate to say it, hate to hear it. Really, they don't have the guys up front to beat Georgia or a Texas. I would say even Ole Miss. Alabama, now those guys, they did allow 200 yards to USF rushing 200 rushing yards at home after dedicating Nick Saban Field 200 yards to USF, which was really mind-boggling to me looking back at that stat scorecard. So I'm not sure if I'm willing to put Alabama in. They're going to dog walk teams because of the line of scrimmage. And I think we're going to see that, especially here with Tennessee when they play Bama. I'm interested in that game, right? I think, with Nico, really it's all about Nico, right? And that's the thing with Tennessee fans, and it is delusional, folks. It is delusional because you haven't won the big games. Now you beat NC State. I think that's a great performance, dominant performance. Nico looked good, not great, looked good. I think he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country very, very, very soon, right? I think that's evident. I really do. I'm not saying that's not a possibility. I'm gonna put up Cameron here. Go Dogs. Thanks, Cameron, my man. Yeah, no, I think this is very interesting watching these teams right here, the up and comers, right? Like Missouri and Tennessee. Um, can they hold up front? That's the biggest question. And the beautiful thing is we're going to learn about that because Tennessee does play Bama. They do play Georgia. Georgia plays Texas, Ole Miss, Bama, all on the road. So that would be the main thing for me going into those games, and then what I'm watching during, right? Because you see how that in that first quarter, how guys are playing up front, right? Maybe the end of the first quarter, the adrenaline starts to wear off just a little bit. Guys are settling in. That's when talent kind of takes over, experience, um, fundamentals up front, and then you kind of it's almost like a barometer for how that game's going to end up in the fourth quarter. Um, and Georgia has a big advantage this week here, absolutely. Another interesting note about this matchup here, Georgia Kentucky. Georgia has scored just 30 points combined in the last two matchups played in Lexington, which is incredible when you think about it, right? Georgia had some dogs on offense in those games, right? It is a little weird playing up there. I'm not sure what it is. I mean, that tells us it's a little weird playing up there, right? Now, I would argue that this Kentucky team is not as good as those Kentucky teams. So that's why I think this might not play into it, especially if you're a numbers guy. If you look through that to try to get a barometer of success or the outcome of the game, what have you. If you're like to put some cheddar on some games and you're looking at the 24-point spread and the 45.5 total, that might play into it. But I think these are different teams. But I did think that was an interesting note. Georgia leads the series 63-12. Haven't lost since 2009, 14 straight. We already talked about the weather there. I don't think so. I mean, it might rain, might sprinkle. I don't know. We're just looking at the weather channel here. Whether it's hard to call on a Wednesday here, right? I don't think it's going to be a factor. If my best guess. Injury wise, I was looking for the availability report from the SEC, right? So they just put that in place. Teams must, or they're going to get fined, heavy fines. Teams must disclose availability reports for SEC games, conference games. So this would be the first one for Georgia. And as of I want to say last time I checked, it was 5 p.m. here on a Wednesday. Nothing for any team. So we don't have that official. But so we're going to go off what Kirby Smart's told us and what we already know. So Oscar Delp had a little of an ankle. He's in. Nate Frazier. It was a stinger. He's in. Michael Williams, questionable with the ankle. Grade 2 sprain. I've had one of those. Swells up like a balloon. He was in a walking boot last week at Tennessee Tech. One of Lissum is questionable here. I'm not sure if Georgia's going to rush him back. I think they're pretty good with what they have up front. Xavier McLeod, questionable there. Abdominal issue. Warren Brinson, questionable with the contusion. It's an ankle foot contusion. But he did practice, so I wouldn't be surprised if he is actually probable. Jordan Hall, doubtful. So he had 2 stress fractures. Stress fractured one knee or leg, and then goes to have surgery on it, does it to the other one. That's some bad luck, brother. And I know the bad luck because my mic has not been working right. Yeah, I'm reeling here, guys. I mean, I've bombarded you guys with 3 different live posts tonight. So thank you for, working with us here. We do it together. Appreciative. Whether you're watching on X, Facebook, or YouTube at the Pulse Sports Network. Thank you for joining. And Arthur Lynch, in case you missed it, Arthur Lynch is actually working with Elon Musk right now. They're in a meeting as we speak to try to help get those astronauts who are just floating in space. Can you imagine that? You're in space. Can't go home. Sorry. We'll get you in January when the planets align correctly. Nope, not with Elon Musk and Arthur Lynch on the cage, okay? They're working on it, guys. They'll be in the air probably as we speak. Probably in a meeting. So he had to miss today. So we're doing this solo and my mic's not helping me either, but we're making it. Let's look here at teams. No, it's not like look at teams. Let's talk about this Georgia at minus 24. Here's what I'm thinking. We haven't put a play. It's not an official prediction. Here's what I'm thinking. Georgia 35, to 7. I'll give them a touchdown. Weirder things has happened. I'll give them a touchdown. Georgia 35 to 7 in that area. I'm going to workshop that prediction. I'm going to keep thinking on it, sleep on it, get a couple nights in. We're going to go again Friday, I believe. Okay. We'll change up the schedule a little bit. Life happens, or the schedule. He's in meetings with Elon. I mean, what can you do? So I like 35 to 7 here right now at this moment because I think Kentucky obviously is going to have a lot of difficulty in scoring, right? And I'm interested to see how they do against a much more talented defensive front seven, really the entire defense, obviously, than South Carolina, who did play well. I'm not trying to take any snap away from South Carolina. The Gamecocks, Shane Beamer, Lenora Sellers, the true freshman or redshirt freshman quarterback, at his second start, he fumbled like 3 times, but recovered all of them. That is the luckiest thing I've ever seen. Yeah, I think that was a good win for them, especially on the road, right? They were 8-point dogs. Good for them. But Georgia's going to obviously pose an entirely different threat, which is how deep and how talented that defense is. So how's Kentucky going to scheme for that? We talked a little bit about it earlier. I think they use that 2-quarterback system. I think Brock starts. He's their passer, right? And I think the Rutgers transfer comes in, Wimsat. He comes in, provides a little extra wrinkle maybe in the run game. They try to see if it works. And I wouldn't blame them if they did, right? Trying to see anything that can work, any area you can try to take some advantage on Georgia, right? Once they kind of sell out to stop the run and are manning up your outside guys, try to throw it over the top, right? It's gonna be a tough day for Kentucky's offense. Defensively, I think they have enough there to get Georgia off the field a few times here and there. Can they make it work? Can they make those stops into points? That's what you have to do. Anytime you can stop Carson Beck and company, and Carson Beck, folks, 7 touchdowns, no interceptions yet. 7 touchdowns, no interceptions. And the Heisman talk on Beck is non-existent, really, right? Because we've had, Quinn Ewers against Michigan right there. It's just about what the games you have and the opponents you win against. That's now he's leading, right? After week 1, it was Travis Hunter and Shador. Because they waxed North Dakota State offensively. They didn't wax them in the game. But interesting enough, and I thought this might be how it went, right? Because you have all those preseason expectations for Carson Beck and this team as a whole and Georgia's championship contention here. And you have to play almost above that. You almost have to make your team look like it's all me. And Carson's not that guy because while he can, like I just told you last year, 398 versus Kentucky, 4 touchdowns and a pick. Right? So he can have games like that, but he doesn't because he gives what the defense allows him, right? Whatever, working off coverages. What look does the defense give you? That's going to dictate things, as he should. That's how he's going to play on Sundays. And that kind of limits his production just a little bit, right? Because Georgia's defense also plays a massive part in this. Is when you have a defense like that, why would you put yourself in a position to make a mistake? Why would you force a 50-50 ball to Colby Young up 17 points or even up 3 points with a defense like that in a close game? You're not going to, because you have faith in that defense and the special teams. Even Brett Thorson. I know Carson does not want Brett Thorson to come on the field. Poor Brett, right? But when he does come on the field, he flips field position. Absolutely. And this is a special teams podcast, folks. We've had, if you missed it, Bo Gardner, UCLA transfer, long snapper for Georgia this year. A long snapper for Georgia this year. Comes in. Well, we had him on the show, folks. We're trying to give you the special teams some special treatment, okay? Because we all just overlook the boys who rarely take the field. But when Brett Thorson and Peyton Woodring come on the field, they are automatic, they're consistent, they're reliable. You combine that with the defense Georgia has, that plays a lot into, and Mike Bobo haters, work with me here, plays a lot into play calling, decision making, and such. And that's a trickle-down effect because Kirby Smart has a culture, and you hear a lot of, off the field talk about the culture, talking on the field here. On field culture He has these guys completely bought in to that strategy, right? That doesn't mean they're not gonna take chances and create explosive plays. Georgia does. Number 5 offense in the country last year, looking like it again this year. Maybe top 4, right? So that all plays into the kind of the Carson Beck Heisman thing, right? Because not only does Georgia have to win and get to the playoff and maybe not win every single game, but maybe, I don't know, how many losses will the Heisman voters look at and be like, well, Carson Beck has a top 3 team as far as blue chip ratio, which is, how many 4 and 5-star guys you got on your team, right? He has all those guys. He has a great defense. He has the Trevor Etienne. He has one of the best offensive lines in the sport. So if Carson Beck doesn't just blow everybody out of the water statistically, then that's when I think there will be some undeserved criticism of him as far as the Heisman talk goes. He's going to have to absolutely, and I've kind of walked back my take on this because I said, after Georgia played Clemson, if he has games like that, what it was like 280, 3 touchdowns. If he has games like that, then he can definitely, make it to New York, right? I don't know. I don't know now. I'm kind of walking that back, right? Because I think with all those things I said and how Georgia plays, and then you know the expectations for the team as a whole, I think it's gonna be really hard for him to kind of stand out in that area. Now, if this was a perfect world, and which is not, but if it was, then he would, because he is leading one of the best teams in the country, right? And right now, the best. And we'll see. We'll find out a lot about that here in a few weeks. Going to Bama, obviously, at Texas, at Ole Miss too, and Tennessee at home. We'll find out a lot about that. But I think that, and those games are a great segue into this too. Another part of this plays in: can he outplay Quinn Ewers, Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart, Nico? And Nico just gets a first name because his last name is it plagues me. I don't know. Can't get to it. Yeah, can Carson Beck outplay those guys? That's going to be huge. It's going to be huge in the minds of Heisman voters, Heisman discourse, right? And Georgia winning those games, even if they lose 1 or 2, heck, even 3. If they lose 3 of those, and Carson Beck plays really, really good and outplays from statistically the other quarterbacks, he'll get there. Absolutely. Winning is going to be a whole different area, right? And we know Heisman's aren't perfect, man. Anytime you got people involved in voting, it's not going to be pleasing to everyone. That's for sure. But if I had to guess, I think he makes the ceremony. I really do. I think he's special. And we're going to see him face a new challenge, right? First of this year, first SEC road start at night, right? I love that. If you've never been to Kroger Field, it's fun. It's a good spot. I like it. Stadium is set up well. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, so separated from the university. Nothing like the Classic City, and they don't make them like that anyway. Great place. Kentucky fans are nice people. Nothing bad to say about Kentucky. Kentucky fans are nice people. They want a win, though. They need wins. I mean, absolutely. It's kind of sad. It's kind of sad. So I feel for them in that aspect. But that to me, a win, like if you would have beat South Carolina last week and heading into this matchup with Georgia, number 1 team in the nation, right? Team that you've lost 14 times in a row to. That's what college football fans want, is the big matchups, which is why I have no problem with the expanded college football playoff, right? I think it does take a little bit of the sting away from each week, because in the past, especially in the BCS era, one loss could derail your entire season. It's still a possibility now, and I'll say a possibility other than it's not a factor now because Notre Dame just lost to Northern Illinois. Yeah, at home. Worst, maybe the worst loss in Notre Dame history. AP top 5. They played Texas A&M, and if you were listening to the show, me and Artie, and I was upset after the A&M Notre Dame game, not because I had any dog in the race, but because the quarterback play was so atrocious, both by Riley Leonard and Connor Weigman. And I don't think defensively they did anything crazy, which is just, it was just bad. So I think we kind of saw that coming just a little bit, the way that they struggled offensively, right? but of course, the AP, we're going to rank them number 5, right? Well, why I say this is potential loss could derail the season because Notre Dame doesn't play in a conference. I have a conference championship to play in. Their schedule is their schedule, and they lose in Northern Illinois. So now you got to work yourself back in. I think they're 18 now, which is possible if it work. Especially with the teams playing each other in the top 15 or so. So there is a road for them to get back, but I think we're going to be talking about that loss a lot when it comes to CFP implications here coming down the road, right? Speaking of CFP implications, and this is what we'll get to now. We're going to go again live on Friday. We'll try to get Artie in. He's in a meeting with Elon Musk, like I said earlier, working to get our great Americans back from space who are just floating out there. We got to talk about these other teams, and we've talked a little bit about there, but I want to get into, teams that impressed, teams that underwhelmed, because folks, and if you're a diehard college football fan beyond just Georgia Bulldogs, then you know this, especially I'm not telling it anything you do not know. But with the CFP expanding, it puts even more weight on what these teams are doing, who they're playing, how well they're playing. Georgia could face any of these guys, right, in the postseason, right? Teams that impressed. We talked about them. Tennessee, Nico against NC State, right? Ranked matchup, both teams. NC State was just dog walked. Absolutely. They had issues in every way imaginable. Now, I think they did give Nico some looks that he wasn't expecting, and there comes the interceptions. But he's going to be really good. The question here is, you'll see this play out in the coming weeks, is up front. I already mentioned that for Tennessee, right? Now, defensively, I like it. You got James Pierce, one of the best rushers in the sport. What about beyond him? Can he get worn down, right? Secondary-wise, completely new look secondary. I think they lost every starter in the secondary. Maybe they have one back. I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me on that. But they do lose a lot of guys. They got relying on the transfer portal there. They haven't been tested in the secondary yet, and they will when they face good quarterbacks and offensive lines that can protect, like Georgia and Bama. Now, Bama, they have some work to do on the offensive line a little bit too. I'm not saying they're perfect. I don't think any team is perfect right now. I mean, we're going into week 3 here, folks, right? These teams are going to get better. The good ones are, right? The good one with good coaching and good schemes. And, of course, good players, but that goes unsaid. We already talked about Northern Illinois. I'm going to put them in here. Teams that impress. Good job for Northern Illinois. First time that school has ever beaten an AP top 5 team. Love it for them. Absolutely. Notre Dame. I don't know, man. The quarterback play, baby. Offense. Got to stretch the field. Got to challenge. They don't. Texas, Michigan. We love Texas on this show. We took Tennessee and Texas on this show. We took Texas by a lot. Me and Artie both agreed heavily on this. And I mean, we already talked about the issues that Michigan was facing, and the AP still going to rank them top 10 preseason. Like, you can't, if we're not, I know it's a preseason ranking and we kind of base a lot of it off last year and what have you. I don't like it. I think it's dumb. Got to rank them somewhere. I get it. But seriously, like, we talked about the quarterback situation with Michigan headed into the game. They're going to be really struggling to score. Donovan Edwards is on the cover of College Football 25 as a backup last year, and he's got like 70 yards on the season. So I guess it was the national championship situation. Asterisk, of course, beside that. Texas, though. Let's focus on Texas. Michigan's not going to be there. Texas, to me, is the closest team to Georgia, and I think that's even a tier situation to where you have the tier A with Georgia and Texas, and then the tier B with your Ole Miss, Oregon, those guys. I mean, Oregon has had a really, really weird start, right? I mean, they go to the wire versus Idaho, right? Last week they go to the wire with an inferior opponent. It's but here's the thing: new quarterback, right? Lost a lot of important players. They gained some really talented ones. They recruited well for Dan Lanning, right? The interesting thing to me here is they're kind of getting exposed defensively more than I thought they would, and that's a Dan Lanning team, right? I mean, I know Boise State has Ashon Jeanty, who is really talented, and he is getting much deserved Heisman talks. He put up, what, 198 on Oregon? That's not championship football for Oregon, and they were talked about with Ohio State and Oregon and Georgia, right? They were number 3 entering the season. But Texas is just they're built like a championship team. They're huge, they're fast, they're really, really good up front for both sides, right? Quinn Ewers is play. Here we go. We're good. Work with me. We're gonna get this working. Here we go. All right, we're going with computer mic. We're going computer mic. Our auto quality is not gonna be great, but that's not what we're here for. We're here for college football. Okay, we're gonna keep going. We'll wrap it up here soon. We're gonna keep going. Texas, yes. Sarkisian and company. That offense is very, very fluid. Right, they're very balanced too. They had issues at running back coming into the season because of preseason injuries, and you really can't tell. That's impressive in its own right. And then Quinn Ewers, he's not. We talked a lot about the quarterback issues, and it's a thing for me because there's such a tier situation with quarterbacks, right? And he is in that top tier with Carson Beck, who can get off his first read, right, and not stare down guys, right? Make off-platform throws, make no-look throws. He's really good on the run. Really good on the run, actually. I mean, look at that Michigan game. That's really all the tape you want to see as far as on the run Quinn Ewers and letting plays develop, right? Finding guys late. But he doesn't really push the ball into bad spots, right? Which is another really, really good tell for an elite quarterback. So, I mean, watch the defense, right? I think the defense still has not been tested, right? But they will. They will against Georgia, especially. So there could be more holes that we're not seeing right now. But I think Texas is there as far as that talent, that really, really good quarterback, a good offensive mind, and a good motivator in Steve Sarkisian. Teams that impressed, moving down the list here. South Carolina, we talked about him. Dylan Stewart on the edge. He's a dog, man. He's going to be a really, really good player, and he's probably going to play on Sundays especially. Arkansas, baby. Taylon Green is the real deal. Now, here's the thing. I know they lost to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's a good team. Ollie Gordon, probably going to win the Big 12. So the Cowboys are good. But they almost outgained Oklahoma State by 300 yards. Still couldn't win. But they still impressed me. I think, coming in, we thought they were going to get dog walked so much this year, Arkansas. And they have, right? They're playing really physical. Sam Pittman is coaching for his job. Absolutely. But I really like Taylon Green. And he gives a lot of issues too as a runner, right? But and a passer, but he can throw a dang deep ball. He can push the ball down the field. And and Arkansas fans, I think that's a breath of fresh air from the KJ Jefferson area. Run it 30 times, down the A gap. Syracuse. Now, interestingly enough, and we all know the Kyle McCord issues last year for the Buckeyes, right? That offense was dismal the entire year. Don't let a Big Ten fan, which they're in my family now. It's interesting, yeah. If you didn't know, don't let the Kyle McCord era at Ohio State cloud your judgment because he is absolutely balling for the Orange and former Georgia assistant Fran Brown. Now, Artie and I, we took Georgia Tech. We were impressed with Georgia Tech's win against Florida State. We were impressed with Brent Key's really his rising, or I don't know if it's raising or rising, and I'm a writer, up Georgia Tech and the Yellow Jackets from the ashes, right? I want them to be good. I'll say it. I want them to be good. I think the rivalry, especially the in-state Georgia Tech, fashion hate, I think it's a better rivalry with them. Good, of course. I think it's a really good thing what Brent Key's doing at Georgia Tech. But Syracuse, first year with Fran Brown, and Brent Key said that basically Syracuse wasn't physical during the week. Fran Brown did not like that, and a quick Google search will get you to his press conference talking about that, how he did not like that, and basically gave Fran Brown the orange bulletin board material to work with through the week. Did not pay off for Tech at all. Really impressed. Kyle McCord's got like 8 touchdowns already. He looks really good. I don't know what went wrong in Ohio State because it's not like he has better players at Syracuse, right? I mean, Ohio State's recruited incredibly well. And they have Hartline coaching wide receivers. They got Ryan Day, the offensive guru, right? What happened there? They kick him out of town. Now you got Will Howard. They're not going to be tested. Here's the thing with Oregon's, I'm hesitant to say regression from last year yet because it is so early in the season. And I think that team does get better, and it's a new quarterback, new system. That is a big challenge in itself. And I think Dylan Gabriel will take some steps, and that defense will take steps to be better by the time Ohio State plays Oregon. But if Oregon is what they've shown us they are right now, we're looking at the quality of opponent, the quality of game they've played, execution, and such. Ohio State is not going to have a problem with Oregon. And looking at it preseason, I was like, okay, they have a really good defense, Ohio State. So they're probably going to beat a lot of teams just by defense alone. So who is the offense that is really going to test them and could possibly win? And that would be Oregon, right? I don't know, right? So if we talk about what they've shown us so far, it doesn't look good. And then we already know what Michigan, what they're facing too, the challenges they face, how they played against Texas. Ohio State is similar up front. I don't know about quarterback play yet. Similar up front, really good receivers. Defense is really, really good. So Michigan, Ohio State is not the matchup we thought that it was going to be either. We were expecting, a close battle, but I don't think that's going to be the case either. So Ohio State, that schedule sets up real nice, baby, real nice. Underwhelmed. We'll get these in quick. Underwhelmed. Iowa lost to Iowa State as a favorite. Offense. I mean, it's Iowa, folks. They were ranked. We keep ranking them. We just keep ranking them. Let's put Iowa. It's like we run out of teams. Let's put Iowa in there. Man, what's Iowa doing? Playing defense, kicking field goals. Put them in there. No, lost to Iowa State. Kansas, Illinois. Kansas was a heavy favorite to Illinois. Yeah, but we're ranking them. We're ranking them, though. We're ranking them. Oklahoma, 16-12. You beat Houston by 4 points. Are you ready for SEC play? Texas looks ready. Oklahoma. A lot of Oklahoma fans do not like how good Texas is right now. And the talk of the SEC, talking a lot about Texas and the Fighting Sarkeesians, but not about Oklahoma. And it looks like that was the right case because Oklahoma does not look like they're ready for SEC play. Under Brent Venables and Arnold at quarterback. Still, just saying it for now, we can only talk about what those teams have done on the field, okay? Still young season, Oklahoma fans. Sooner fans, don't freak out too much, all right? It hasn't been a good product, but there's a potential to get better here, all right? But you do have to play Tennessee, and that's coming up. Penn State played to the wire against Bowling Green. Now, they beat, I think, a good team in West Virginia to open the season. West Virginia does not look like what we thought they were going to be, though, which is incredible because they had so many guys returning from that team that won 9 games last year. All right, so Penn State beats Bowling Green handily. We talked about Penn State, how we were impressed last week with Artie. Well, wire to wire to get Bowling Green. Like, it's incredible. That defense, whoa, 30 points to Bowling Green. Oregon, talked about them. I won't rehash it. Michigan, talked about them. Won't rehash it. Alabama, it's just the over 200 rushing yards from USF. I know you look at the scoreboard. That scoreboard does not indicate how that game went. It was a very, very close game. Headed into the fourth quarter. And then the Nick Saban field, it wasn't a great start. And I'm sure I've seen all the memes of him just standing there watching USF run and run and run. First down. That's something to watch now, right? Because Alabama still has dogs, right? They got guys returning. They did a heck of a job in the transfer portal. The questions were new staff, new situation entirely. Can you do the little things right, like stop the run, like Alabama does? They're putting that on the bulletin board, 200 yards by USF, and challenging those guys to be better because they're going to have to be better, right? Georgia, Alabama, September 28th. Welcome to the SEC for Kalen DeBoer and company. That's going to be something to watch, folks, because Georgia offensive line, we know what they look like. Texas, we know what they look like up front. It's going to be interesting to watch the Alabama team defensively. When we talk about the offense, it's going to be fine offensively. They might have execution mishaps here and there, but Jalen Milroe, he's an absolute dog, and Georgia fans know that better than anybody. Okay? Let's move up to Pick'em updates. All right? And we're not going to pick him. Hopefully, I'll get Artie on the show on Friday after his meetings and possible mission to space. Already 7-4. I'm 6-5. It's a tough start. It's not great, but we're still over 500. Okay. Games I'm looking at this week. I won't pick them yet. I'm gonna name them here. Alabama at Wisconsin. We just talked about the Crimson Tides getting 8 points at Wisconsin. Luke Fickell and company. Now, that's a tough bunch. Okay, that's a tough bunch. Luke Fickell. It's gonna be a well coached team, right? Do they have the dudes Alabama has? Absolutely not. But it is a road game for the Crimson Tides. First road game for DeBoer and company. Be interesting. Only 8 points. Or is that 6 points? 8 or 6. Can't read my own computer. LSU, -7 at South Carolina. That's going to be a sneaky good game, folks. Because I think South Carolina, they proved some stuff last week now. Right? They can get after the quarterback. They get turnovers. So it's going to be interesting to watch. Right? LSU, obviously, that game, it was a bad one for the Fighting Kellys. LSU, you got to ride Garrett Nussmeier. You got to ride it, man. Let him throw the rock over the field, baby. Let him go. I think he has a lot of talent. I think it's challenging to watch that team and think there's not something left to be desired. Right? So watch out for USC Junior here. That's going to be a really good environment if you have a South Carolina game. Boston College at Missouri. Now, this is interesting enough. Boston College plays Missouri, right? Castellanos at quarterback. They beat the brakes off of Florida State, who has more talent up front. They don't play like it. They have more talent. Now, Boston College going into that Florida State game was a 16.5-point dog. Same line against Missouri here. I like Boston College, right? That's what I'm leaning towards. We'll see what that line changes. Texas A&M getting 3.5 points at Florida. Now, Florida's interesting, right? Because Florida, they put Lagway in, DJ Lagway, really, really highly talented quarterback recruit. They put Lagway in, and the offense looks completely different, right? He's a different guy. Now, Mertz, I guess they started him because of the experience, but and I know they benched him because he had a concussion. I mean, that's a pretty good reason. But, I mean, do they ride Lagway the rest of the year? I don't see why not. I mean, you're Napier. You're fighting for your job. It might already be lost. That job might already be lost. Why not? Let the guy develop, right? Maybe if Lagway really has the potential to not only save Florida's future beyond this year with the toughest schedule in the country, that, they're probably going to win 4 or 5 games, maybe. Not only set up Florida for success, future-wise, if he stays, but also kind of save Napier's job. And that's a lot on your shoulders, especially. I think they need to ride him. I mean, it was clear that offense was better with him in. But A&M, good defense. Connor Wigman, he got to prove something. You can't stare down your reads, right? That's what he does. We'll see if he gets any better here at Florida. Arizona at Kansas State. This is a ranked matchup. The Big 12, the reason I even mention this game, it is a ranked matchup, but the Big 12 is wide open. And folks, let's remember, these guys will be in the playoffs. Okay? Big 12 winner, automatic bid, right? Get a bye. So it pays to pay attention to these things, folks. Arizona at Kansas State. Kansas State with Oklahoma State, in my mind, as the dudes in the Big 12. Right? I think those two ends up coming down to those two. Right? Something to pay attention to. How good is Kansas State here? Oklahoma State, I think we learned a little bit about them the other day against Arkansas. Defense has some holes in it, right? But offensively, I think they're gonna put points on people, and they did against Arkansas. Not saying anything too crazy about Arkansas's D, but they're gonna put up some points. Ollie Gordon's the real deal, right? So just games to watch. We'll get back here on Friday, I believe. We'll try to get Arthur in. Arthur Lynch, former Georgia tight end. He's my usual co-host. He wasn't here to witness the mic issues. I think I'm still writing on the computer laptop mic, guys. So thank you so much for sticking with us. This is not a major production by any means, but at least I have a mic. Usually, not today, apparently. But we roll with the punches, and I think we did. I think we had some good college football talk today, guys. So thank you so much, UGA Football Live with JC Shelton. If you're watching on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, or listening wherever you get your podcast listeners, I apologize for the quality of the audio. This probably was. But we're going to get these things fixed. We're going to be back in action as soon as possible. Thank you so much, everyone. Stay tuned for updates. I think we're going Friday live, and we'll get that scheduled out and announced for you guys. Until then, take care.